We've all been there. We've all had moments where our emotions have gotten the better of us. We've all experienced moments of grief and the emptiness on the foot of the loss of a loved one. We've all been so stricken with our emotions that we generate a mystical barrier around a suburban town, indoctrinating the locals and simulating the events of various sitcoms with our resurrected partner in a deranged fantasy. Well, maybe not that last part. Hello and welcome to another rendition of GallifreyanAvenger reviews. It's been a while. What better topic to cover in this return than the latest addition to the MCU, WandaVision. Wait, it's a series, not a movie. Marvel Televisual Universe? MTU? Anyway, WandaVision is the latest Marvel series and the first to air on Disney+. With the effects of the ongoing pandemic affecting the attendance at cinemas, forcing Marvel Studios to push their upcoming movie release dates indefinitely, WandaVision serves somewhat of a continuation of the narrative post-Avengers Endgame. I covered my opinions of the show in a previous video, about 3/4 of the way through the episodes, and admittedly it was a low effort, off-the-cuff upload. But now that the show has concluded, I've decided to produce a more concise analysis of the show. Hopefully. We'll see. If you're new to the channel and you like what you see, be sure to subscribe or maybe leave a comment on what you'd like to see me cover. The feedback helps and I really appreciate it. But anyway, let's get back on track. As implied by the show's title, the story centres around Wanda Maximoff and the vision of the Avengers and how they start living their lives together in the setting of a 1950s sitcom, oddly enough. Now the first thing that is probably a hot button issue is the fact that Vision died towards the end of Avengers Infinity War. Twice. However, from the first few episodes we follow Wanda and Vision living their lives, starting off as a newly married couple in the friendly suburban town of Westview, New Jersey. Wanda's a housewife, Vision is working at some undisclosed business firm, kooky acquaintances, live studio audience, the whole package. However, something is off about this whole environment as Wanda becomes alert to the fact that someone or something is trying to reach her. The first 3 episodes are somewhat self-contained, progressing from the 50s to the 60s and 70s respectively. We're given a wider context of the situation in the 4th episode where we are introduced to Captain Monica Rambeau, a high-ranking officer of the Sentient Weapons Observation and Response Division, or SWORD. Well, at least they got their acronym sorted quicker. Monica comes back into existence after the effects of Thanos' snap are undone, only to realise her mother died of cancer while she was gone. Just for the record, Monica's mother is Captain Marvel's best friend and a founding member of SWORD. I would personally like to thank WandaVision for reminding me of that dumpster fire of a movie. 3 weeks later, her commanding officer instructs her to investigate a missing persons case, which brings her to the outskirts of Westview. She meets with FBI agent Wu from Ant-Man and the Wasp, already on the scene, who has already picked up on the strange surroundings. They notice a barrier around the perimeter of the town which absorbs a reconnaissance drone, and then eventually Monica herself. SWORD get notified of this and assemble their best and brightest to monitor the activity of the barrier with the intent of rescuing Monica. Among their best and brightest is Darcy Lewis from the first 2 Thor films. While I thought she was insufferable in those films, I have to acknowledge that her character has undergone a bit of growth. She is now a doctor of astrophysics, and while she still has cringy moments, I can tolerate her a bit more than I used to. She manages to ascertain that a broadcast frequency is embedded within the barrier, where she tunes in to the WandaVision sitcom. She coins the term the hex, referring to the hexagonal shape of the barrier. SWORD discovers that the missing people in their missing persons case appear to be supporting cast members in the show. This is also the case for Monica, who they also find in the show, starring as a neighbour of Wanda's. After helping deliver twin boys through immaculate conception to Wanda, Monica manages to upset her when the subject of her brother Pietro/Quicksilver's death comes up. Wanda exiles her from the town by blasting her back out of the barrier. From there, S.W.O.R.D. continued to make attempts to apprehend Wanda to no avail. It transpires that in her grief of losing Vision, Wanda migrated to Westview and created the Hex as a sort of augmented pocket dimension. Because who needs therapy? Meanwhile, Vision is beginning to get suspicious of the goings-on in town. He is able to bypass the sitcom personas of his castmates, quote-unquote, who reveal that they are all under Wanda's spell, pleading for their lives. Vision confronts Wanda of this, who shuts him down. Shortly thereafter, a new cast member is added to the list, as we are graced with the presence of Quicksilver. Only thing is, he is played by Evan Peters, who portrayed Quicksilver in the X-Men films. This opened the door to a number of questions like, is this the multiverse in action? Are they going to bring on more X-Men? We will get back to this, believe me. Wanda's children have aged up dramatically, going from infants to age 5 to age 10 in less than 2 episodes. They have also inherited superpowers, variations of their mothers and uncles. Not to be mean or anything, but they don't serve the story in any meaningful way outside of being an emotional crutch. Vision continues to investigate the bizarre goings-on around town, and at one point tries to escape the barrier, compromising his life, as he can only exist within the Hex, as he is effectively a living memory. At this point, Wanda retaliates by expanding the perimeter of the barrier, assimilating members of the S.W.O.R.D. task force, namely Darcy. Monica is hell-bent on returning into the barrier against the warnings that it will compromise her molecular integrity. She successfully breaches the Hex, which awakens her superpowers. Whether or not these powers are exclusive to her presence in the Hex is completely unexplained, but come on, we can't expect them to expand on this now, can we? Wanda rejects Monica's support again, overwhelmed by the larger consequences of existing within the Hex, and is led away by her caricature of a nosy neighbour, Agnes, who crops up periodically throughout the series. In a somewhat contrived twist, it is revealed that Agnes is actually another fellow witch called Agatha Harkness, responsible for pulling the strings within the Hex in the hope of luring Wanda so that she can assimilate her powers. Agatha brings Wanda on a trip down memory lane, going through the events of her life in a retroactive attempt to canonize Wanda's innate mystical abilities prior to her experimentation by Hydra, and also shoehorning in how she loved classic sitcoms as a child. Elizabeth Olsen's performance is commendable, but the writing is all over the place. Which brings me neatly along to the finale. Oh boy, there's a lot to unpack here. It's revealed that the one-dimensional warmongering director of S.W.O.R.D. has planned to deploy a reprogrammed Vision, reconstructed from his remains and activated by remnants of the Hex energy, to kill Wanda. The Hex-generated Vision faces off against him. They have a showdown, and Hex Vision neutralizes S.W.O.R.D. Vision by transferring his memories into the Doppelganger's CPU in what is a blatant Deus Ex Machina. Excitement! Agatha continues to torture Wanda, demoralizing her to a state in which she can usurp her. The Westview citizens come out of their trance and Wanda orders them to evacuate, allowing her and Agatha to hash it out in a climactic battle? The special effects look nice, but I'll be honest, I wasn't really invested. Wanda eventually unlocks her full potential as the Scarlet Witch and bests Agatha, trapping her in her eccentric sitcom persona as penance. Also, let's revisit the whole Quicksilver conundrum. As I've already mentioned, Agatha was pulling some strings, including inserting this version of Quicksilver into the mix as a plant. But we were expecting too much of Disney and Marvel to have any sort of X-Men tie-in. Turns out he was just another Westview citizen compelled by an enchanted necklace, and his name was Ralph Boner. Seriously? First of all, I refuse to believe that he was granted super speed by Agatha. I know we're talking about a show where a wannabe sorceress has created her own fantasy land, but my suspension of disbelief has its limits. Also, Disney knew what they were doing casting Evan Peters in the role. This was a total cop-out. I know that Disney has acquired the IPs of X-Men from Fox, so inevitably some variation will be churned out by them, but still, this was a cheap move. So Wanda decides to rescind the hex across Westview, forcing her to say goodbye to her magically generated family. Her and Vision share a tearful farewell and everything goes back to normal. The Sword Director is arrested for his actions and Wanda does a final walk of shame, being the subject of scornful looks from the Westview residents. She is reassured by Monica, however, who says, "They'll never know how much you sacrificed." What? Hun, that's not the issue. They have every right to be mad at someone who has effectively been using them as marionettes for God knows how long. That's a complete non sequitur, I'm sorry. Whatever way you want to dress this up as, Wanda is still at fault here. It's incredible that there's no consequences for her after this. Anyway, Wanda goes into self-exile, presumably until another ensemble film, and Monica is visited by a Skrull, in a tie-in to the upcoming Captain Marvel sequel. I can hardly wait. And that's WandaVision. Certainly an experience, I'll say that. For a show that had such a major amount of build-up, it was disappointing to see the payoff fall apart so dramatically. Pros. I really enjoyed the homages to the sitcoms of the respective eras. Episode 6 in particular was a major nostalgia hit for me because of the clear references to Malcolm in the Middle. The performances were decent. Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany have a great dynamic together, and Catherine Hahn as Agatha was so over the top that I had to laugh a good few times. I liked the Scarlet Witch outfit. That's going to be clipped and taken out of context, isn't it? On to the cons. The resolution. The rushed pace of the finale in trying to resolve everything in a haphazard way left a bad taste in my mouth. You would have thought, especially during the run of the Marvel Netflix shows, that they would take notes from that in terms of the pacing. Can't have everything, I guess. The week-by-week release. I know, this may sound a little entitled, seeing as this format is usually commonplace. I guess Netflix has spoiled me a little bit in how they release entire series, enabling binge watching. I was invested in the show, constantly wondering what will happen next, only to go, damn it, I have to wait another week. Where the hell were the other Avengers during this whole saga? I know a lot of the contracts of the top tier Avengers have expired, but just from a narrative point of view, you'd think something like this happening in Westview would raise alarm bells. Nitpick, but still. In conclusion, WandaVision was a fun departure from the overarching MCU, and was worth devoting 9 weeks of my time to. I don't know, what else are you going to do during lockdown? It had potential as well as intriguing concepts, but they could have stuck the landing a lot better. I'm going to give WandaVision 3 out of 5 stars. Thank you for watching this video. As I said in the beginning, be sure to subscribe if you're interested in seeing more from me, leave a comment or hit the thumbs up. Until next time, I've been GallifreyanAvenger. See you next time. Take care.